We've been talking a lot about how leaders, small business owners specifically, can be more creative, do things that are more meaningful, more fulfilling, and develop as they're becoming an artist and just kind of taking that to a new level. And we also know that part of our job is to influence the team. Our friend John Maxwell says that leadership is influence. How do we get all this stuff into the team? Is there such thing as a culture of practice? Can we build that in our organizations?
Yeah, great question. So what's culture, right? Like if you open up a container of kimchi or some yogurt, you know what culture is, right?
Because bacteria.
One little thing touched another little thing, touched another little thing. Culture is the way we do things around here. Culture is people like us do things like this. Culture is what happens when all of your people are watching you all the time. And if you are celebrating the person who got a big sale, even though he or she cut some corners, that becomes part of your culture. If you are publicly denigrating somebody who tried something creative that didn't work, that becomes part of your culture. The person who gets the Employee of the Month parking space has made an announcement through their actions about what it's like around here. And at the International House of Pancakes, my favorite foreign restaurant, if you go there, you'll see near the men's room, there's a plaque of Employee of the Month. The way you end up Employee of the Month at IHOP is you do exactly what the boss says. So if that's your culture, then don't be surprised that there isn't a practice of creativity and generosity and connection and leadership and art. On the other hand, if Employee of the Month, whether it's literal or figurative, goes to the person who did something that didn't fail, that didn't work, takes responsibility and gives away credit, then tells everyone what they learned, that will happen more. And it will happen more at the very same time your bottom line does just as well, if not better. They're not related. Perfectionism and perfect are different. And good enough is a very precise term. It means it's good enough. You don't need anything to be better than good enough because we already defined what you did as good enough. And now we have resources to make things better, but better doesn't feel like perfect. Better is simply better.
I'm thinking about a lady on our team, and she's newer in her career. And I love this lady. She's a fireball. She's also a bit of a bull in a china shop. And I was in a meeting with her recently. And as the leader of this area, and we've got the strategy and we've got our objectives, and she came in to report on something. And the way that she articulated what she wanted to do was a bit reckless. Yet the ingenuity, the risk that she took, the art that she was trying to ship here, there was part of me that thought, I love this because I see me and you 15 years ago when I was being reckless. And then people would slap my hand and say, you can't do it that way here. You got to do it this way. But I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And I found this tension in my spirit, Seth, of not wanting to squelch this thing that I knew was over time the key to her becoming successful. And yet as a leader, I saw something that needed to be refined, to be polished a bit. As leaders, how do we steward this responsibility of helping mature and groom our people and also not force them to be cogs in the machine?
Exactly. So reckless is an important word. So is fearless. We don't need someone who's going to be reckless because that means they don't care about the outcomes and they don't care about what they break along the way. But we also don't need someone to be fearful because that's too much fear. Fearless sits next to reckless, not good either. What we need is someone who understands the genre of what it's like around here, who understands how to talk about their ideas. And then, number two, someone who doesn't need us to take responsibility for their actions. They need to take responsibility. And what that means is we can create a culture where people do experiments, they do art on the small, where if they are wrong, the cost is pretty low. You shouldn't say to a new employee, oh yeah, you take over our email database and try whatever you want, because within a week you're going to be out of business. But it's totally fine to say, here's 100 email addresses of customers we know are resilient and like us. Go test some things on these 100 people. And if it doesn't work, it's your fault. And if it does work, it's your fault. Go, get back to me later. And it's the experiments and the mistakes in the small that permit us to gain confidence to do it at a different scale because we've learned the genre. And often big organizations fail, not because they have reckless people, but because they're so afraid of big mistakes that they refuse to have little mistakes. And then out of nowhere comes an organization like Slack, right? That completely took Microsoft and others by surprise. Microsoft could have launched Slack in a weekend with 3 engineers, but they didn't because they didn't want to make a small mistake. And as a result, it's costing them billions of dollars to catch up.